On January 30, 2025, former President Donald Trump signed a settlement agreement with Meta Platforms Incorporated, resulting in a $25 million payment to Trump. This resolution came after a prolonged legal dispute stemming from Meta's decision to suspend Trump's accounts following the Capitol riots on January 6, 2021. Background of the dispute. The conflict originated when Meta, the parent company of Facebook and Instagram, suspended Trump's accounts due to concerns over the potential for incitement to violence in the wake of the Capitol riots. Trump characterized this suspension as a violation of his rights, claiming it was politically motivated and constituted a breach of his free speech. This led to a series of lawsuits filed by Trump against the tech giant, igniting a media frenzy and public discourse about the responsibilities and liabilities of social media platforms, especially regarding political figures. Legal proceedings. Throughout the legal battles, Trump's team argued that Meta's actions were unjust and sought damages for the perceived infringement on his rights. The proceedings attracted significant media attention, highlighting the contentious nature of social media governance and its intersection with political free speech. As the case unfolded, it became a focal point for discussions about the role of technology companies in moderating content and the implications of such actions on public discourse. Settlement agreement. After months of litigation, both parties reached a settlement agreement in January 2025. Meta's decision to pay $25 million to Trump was seen as a strategic move to avoid further legal entanglements that could potentially damage its public image and operational integrity. The settlement was described as a significant development in the ongoing narrative regarding social media's influence on politics. Implications of the settlement. 1. Financial aspects. The $25 million settlement is a considerable amount, reflecting Meta's willingness to resolve the dispute amicably. Analysts noted that the payment might also serve as a precedent for future cases involving social media platforms and political figures. 2. Impact on social media policy. The resolution of this case raises questions about how social media companies will manage political content moving forward. The settlement may lead Meta to reassess its content moderation policies, striving to strike a balance between allowing free speech and enforcing community guidelines. 3. Public and political reactions. The responses to the settlement varied widely. Supporters of Trump hailed the agreement as a victory for free speech and a repudiation of perceived censorship by tech companies. Conversely, critics underscored the necessity for robust regulations on social media platforms to prevent the manipulation of political discourse. Differences in coverage. Various news outlets covered the settlement with differing emphases. For instance, CNN primarily focused on the facts surrounding the settlement, while sources like The Hill and The Wall Street Journal provided deeper analyses of the implications for both Trump and Meta. The coverage highlighted potential future changes in social media policy and the financial ramifications of the settlement. Conclusion. The settlement between Donald Trump and Meta Platforms Incorporated marks a pivotal moment in the ongoing dialogue about the influence of social media on politics and the legal boundaries surrounding free speech. As both parties navigate the aftermath of this agreement, its impact is expected to resonate within the tech industry and among political entities grappling with the complexities of online platforms. The case underscores the evolving challenges of content moderation and the responsibilities of social media companies in the digital age. The recent settlement agreement between Donald Trump and Meta Platforms Inc., formerly Facebook, has sparked a significant conversation about the interplay between social media free speech and political power. The fact that Trump received a $25 million payment in this settlement is striking, particularly given the context of the legal disputes surrounding his social media presence. Counterintuitive information. 1. Financial motivation versus ideological stance. One might intuitively assume that a company like Meta would resist paying a high settlement to avoid setting a precedent that could encourage similar legal actions. However, the decision to pay Trump $25 million reflects a strategic move to resolve a potentially protracted legal battle. This indicates that despite the ideological stance of promoting free speech, financial pragmatism can override such principles when the stakes are high. 2. Public perception of free speech. The settlement has been framed by Trump supporters as a victory for free speech, which is paradoxical given that social media platforms are private entities with their own rules governing content. This situation underscores a counterintuitive aspect of the public discourse. While many advocate for unrestricted free speech, the reality is that platforms like Meta have the authority to enforce their own guidelines, often leading to censorship that some view as necessary to maintain community standards. 3. Impact on future regulation. The outcome of this settlement could lead to greater scrutiny and potential regulation of social media companies, which seems counterintuitive. Rather than empowering social media giants to operate without consequences, the settlement could galvanize calls for stricter oversight to prevent perceived political bias in content moderation. This suggests that while Trump may view this as a personal victory, it could paradoxically result in a more regulated environment that restricts the very freedoms he claims to champion. For legal precedent for political figures, the resolution of this dispute might unintentionally create a precedent that could embolden other political figures to take legal action against social media companies for perceived injustices. This is counterintuitive because while the settlement appears to be a win for Trump, it could lead to a wave of lawsuits from various public figures, complicating the landscape for social media platforms and potentially leading to more stringent content moderation practices. 5. Meta's image management. The agreement suggests that Meta is prioritizing its public image and operational stability over the potential backlash from paying a high-profile figure like Trump. This moves against the intuitive belief that companies will distance themselves from controversial figures to maintain a neutral stance. Instead, Meta's willingness to settle can be interpreted as an acknowledgement that avoiding legal battles, especially with influential political figures, may be more beneficial in the long run despite the immediate criticism it may attract. 6. Political polarization and social media. The mixed reactions to the settlement reveal the deepening polarization surrounding social media's role in politics. Intuitively, one might expect a more unified response to a high-profile legal dispute involving free speech. However, the reactions are sharply divided along political lines, demonstrating that social media's influence has exacerbated existing divides rather than fostering a common ground for discussion. In conclusion, the settlement between Trump and Meta serves as a complex case study in the evolving relationship between political power, social media regulation, and public perception. The counterintuitive elements surrounding this agreement highlight the intricate dynamics at play in contemporary discourse about free speech, corporate responsibility, and the future of online platforms. As the landscape continues to evolve, the implications of this settlement will likely reverberate through both the political and technological spheres. The settlement agreement between Donald Trump and Meta Platforms Incorporated is a pivotal development that is likely to have long-lasting implications not only for both entities involved but also for the broader context of social media governance, political discourse, and free speech in the digital age. While the immediate details of the settlement, namely the $25 million payment and the resolution of legal disputes, are noteworthy, several significant aspects of this agreement may be overlooked by the general populace. Here are the critical components that merit deeper consideration. 1. Legal precedent and implications for free speech. The legal battles stemming from Trump's account suspension raise essential questions about the nature of free speech in an era dominated by private social media platforms. The settlement could set a precedent for how courts view the actions of social media companies in moderating content, particularly that of political figures. This case emphasizes the tension between corporate governance of platforms and individual rights to expression. Significance. The implications of this settlement transcend Trump and Meta. They could influence future legal cases involving politicians and social media companies. If courts begin to treat social media platforms as public spaces for speech, the thresholds for content moderation could change dramatically, affecting how these companies operate and enforce their rules. 2. Impact on content moderation policies. The settlement could prompt Meta to reassess its content moderation practices, especially regarding political figures. The company has faced criticism for its inconsistent application of rules, and this agreement may pressure Meta to adopt more transparent and uniform policies moving forward. Significance. If Meta alters its approach, the outcome may lead to a more predictable environment for users, but it could also open the door for increased misinformation, especially in politically charged contexts. The balance between allowing free speech and maintaining a safe platform will be a contentious issue for Meta and similar companies in the future. 3. Political landscape and public perception. The reactions to the settlement reveal a divide in public opinion and the political landscape. Supporters of Trump view the settlement as a validation of his claims about censorship, while opponents see it as an opportunity to advocate for stricter regulations on social media giants. Significance. This divergence highlights the broader narrative around social media's role in shaping political discourse and public opinion. As political figures increasingly turn to these platforms for communication, the dynamics of engagement, misinformation, and influence will be critical to monitor. The settlement could galvanize movements for reform in social media governance, particularly in an election year. 4. Financial implications for Meta. The $25 million payment, while significant, may be a strategic move by Meta to avoid prolonged litigation that could draw further scrutiny and negative attention to its practices. This financial decision reflects a prioritization of reputation management over potential legal expenses and the risk of setting a precedent. Significance. Meta's willingness to pay such a sum could indicate the company's recognition of the rising stakes related to its role in political discourse. As public scrutiny intensifies, Meta may be compelled to invest more in compliance and oversight, potentially leading to increased operational costs in the long run. 5. Broader industry reactions. The settlement is likely to elicit reactions beyond Meta, affecting other social media platforms and tech companies. Observers in the industry will be watching closely to see how this case influences their policies and practices regarding content moderation and user engagement. Significance. Companies like Twitter, YouTube, and others may feel pressure to reassess their own policies in light of this settlement. The tech industry's response could lead to a wave of policy changes that reflect a more cautious approach to moderating political content, potentially stifling debate or conversely allowing more unchecked discourse. 6. Public trust in social media. The settlement may also impact public trust in social media platforms. Voters and users may become more skeptical of the motivations behind content moderation decisions, especially when they perceive that such actions are influenced by political biases. Significance. Trust is a critical component of user engagement. If users believe that social media platforms are not neutral arbiters of information, they may disengage or seek alternative platforms. This shift could disrupt the current landscape, leading to the rise of niche platforms that cater to specific ideological groups. Conclusion. The settlement agreement between Donald Trump and Meta is more than a legal resolution. It is a reflection of the ongoing complexities surrounding free speech, content moderation, and the responsibilities of social media platforms. The nuances of this agreement will likely resonate in various sectors, prompting discussions and potential changes that could reshape the landscape of digital communication and political engagement. By understanding these critical dimensions, stakeholders, policymakers, and the public can better navigate the evolving role of social media in contemporary society. 1. Settlement amount and implications for Meta. The $25 million settlement signifies Meta's strategic choice to resolve the legal dispute rather than engage in lengthy litigation that could potentially harm its reputation and financial standing. This decision highlights the increasing pressure on tech companies to manage their relationships with prominent political figures and the ramifications of their content moderation policies. 2. Impact on social media policy and content moderation. This case may set a precedent for how social media platforms handle political figures and their speech. The settlement could lead to Meta reassessing its content moderation practices, balancing the need for free speech with the necessity of enforcing community guidelines. This dynamic is crucial as it reflects broader societal concerns regarding misinformation, hate speech, and the role of social media in democratic processes. 3. Public and political reactions. The mixed responses to the settlement underscore the polarized nature of contemporary political discourse. For Trump's supporters, the agreement represents a victory for free speech, whereas critics express concerns about the influence of money and power in shaping social media policies. This divergence in opinion reflects deeper societal divisions regarding the role of technology in politics and governance. For future implications for tech and politics, the settlement not only resolves a specific legal conflict but also raises questions about the future relationship between social media companies and political figures. As technology continues to evolve, the implications of this agreement may influence how both parties navigate content moderation and political engagement. The ongoing discussion about regulation, transparency, and accountability in the tech industry will likely be shaped by this case and its outcomes. 1. Brown v. Board of Education 1954. This landmark Supreme Court case addressed racial segregation in public schools. The decision declared that state laws establishing separate public schools for black and white students were unconstitutional, effectively overturning the precedent set by Plessy v. Ferguson 1896, which upheld the separate but equal doctrine. The case was a significant moment in the American civil rights movement, as it challenged the legality of segregation and promoted the idea of equal access to education. 2. United States v. Nixon 1974. This Supreme Court case revolved around the Watergate scandal and the subsequent cover-up efforts by President Richard Nixon. The court ruled that the president was not above the law and that he was required to release tape recordings and documents related to the scandal. This decision affirmed the principle of judicial review and set a precedent for the limits of presidential power, ultimately leading to Nixon's resignation from office. 3. Citizens United v. Federal Election Commission 2010. This Supreme Court case fundamentally changed the landscape of campaign finance in the United States. The court ruled that the government could not limit independent expenditures for political campaigns by corporations and unions, citing free speech protections under the First Amendment. The decision led to the rise of super PACs and significantly increased the influence of money in politics, stirring ongoing debates about the role of corporate funding in electoral processes. The recent settlement agreement between Donald Trump and Meta Platforms Incorporated signifies a pivotal moment in the intersection of social media and political discourse. As we move forward, several predictions can be made regarding the implications of this settlement on various sectors, including politics, social media policy, and public perception. 1. Changes in social media policy. The settlement is likely to prompt Meta and potentially other social media platforms to re-evaluate their content moderation policies. The financial implications of this agreement may lead Meta to adopt a more cautious approach in dealing with political figures. This could involve revised guidelines. Expect Meta to establish clearer guidelines on how it handles content from politicians, aiming to avoid similar legal challenges in the future. This may involve more transparent processes and criteria for account suspensions and reinstatements. Increased engagement with users. Meta may implement mechanisms for users, particularly political figures, to challenge decisions related to content moderation more effectively. This could help mitigate backlash and enhance trust in its moderation practices. 2. Impact on political communication. Trump's settlement is likely to embolden him and other political figures to leverage social media in their campaigns, as they may perceive a more favorable environment for free speech. This could result in heightened political activity online. Expect to see a surge in political activity on platforms like Meta, with candidates utilizing social media for direct communication with their constituencies. This could lead to increased polarization as contentious topics are debated in real time. Legal precedents. The settlement may set a precedent for future cases involving social media and political figures. Other politicians may follow suit seeking legal recourse against platforms that suspend or moderate their content, potentially leading to a flurry of lawsuits. 3. Public perception and trust in social media. The public reaction to the settlement will likely influence perceptions of social media platforms. Divided opinions may lead to increased scrutiny. Social media companies might face heightened scrutiny from the public and lawmakers regarding their role in political discourse. This could prompt calls for more stringent regulations governing platform operations and content moderation. Shift in user trust. While Trump supporters may view the settlement as a triumph for free speech, critics could argue it exemplifies the need for accountability within social media. This dichotomy may lead to a split in user trust where some users feel empowered while others feel marginalized. 4. Legislative and regulatory responses. The settlement may catalyze discussions in legislative bodies about the need for comprehensive regulations governing social media platforms. This could manifest in new legislation. Expect lawmakers to propose new regulations aimed at ensuring transparency and accountability in how social media companies operate, particularly regarding political content. This may include measures that define the boundaries of free speech on private platforms. Calls for oversight. There may be increased advocacy for independent oversight boards or commissions to review and guide social media policies, especially concerning politically sensitive content. 5. Long-term effects on Meta's business strategy. The financial implications of the settlement could lead Meta to reassess its broader business strategy, including resource allocation. Meta may allocate more resources to legal and compliance teams to navigate the complexities of content moderation while minimizing legal risks in the future. Focus on user experience. To mitigate backlash, Meta might prioritize enhancing user experience, investing in features that promote positive engagement and community building as opposed to divisive content. Conclusion. The settlement between Trump and Meta is a significant event with far-reaching implications for social media policy, political communication, and public trust. As these changes unfold, the landscape of online discourse may become increasingly complex, influenced by the need for balance between free speech and responsible content moderation. The next few years will be critical in shaping how social media platforms operate within the political arena, and the precedents set by this case will likely resonate throughout the tech industry and beyond.